Out of the street corners they scream. You knew it was coming. You've been waiting for this for months. Rumour hardened into fear and now they scream at you. The sirens, their hysterical wail tearing through the white noise of the city. And you run. You run to pick up those things that can never be replaced. A picture of them in the days when they still loved you. Your mother's wedding ring. And then you turn to your shelf of games. You only have room for 5. 5 games for Doomsday. 5 Games for Doomsday is a show in which board game personalities are thrust into a cabin in the woods to outrun an oncoming disaster, but can only take 5 of their games with them. But which will they choose? My guest this week is a behemoth in the world of North American publishing. What started as a fan's quest to bring back his favourite CCG blossomed into one of the most recognisable publishers in the United States. He was responsible for the English version of Agricola and probably most significantly brought the monster hit Pandemic to the world. After that, he oversaw the transformation of Wizkids into a viable and valuable board game publisher. My guest this week is Zev Shlasinger. Zev, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So how hard was it for you to pick the games for this?
I wouldn't say hard. I looked. It is work, right? I've looked through many games, and then picked the ones that I liked. And fortunately, it seems the majority of people had the same taste I did.
So I imagine being a publisher that you see a lot of games. What's the hit rate to sort of getting prototypes to games that you think you want to publish?
It's definitely in the low percentage. I never really paid attention, but I do see a lot of different games. You're looking probably 2, 3, 4%, something like that, based on the games that I see.
And so, is it just because the games are below standard, or is there a specific criteria that you go for when you're looking at a game?
I would say, these days it's different than it was in the past, because with so many games coming out now, even good games get passed because there's a lot of good games out there. I'm looking for great, wow, something with a cool hook that I can market. So games that I would have published, 5 years ago, even, maybe even 3 years ago or so, they're getting a pass now because of just the competition that's out there. But overall, I'm looking for really good, fun, unique games.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think the quality has shot up so much? Is it just that there's just so many more people designing, so there's much more chance of a high hit rate, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think a lot of things. I think also the success of the industry or the growing of the industry. Many people have come in. There's now a lot of information for designers on how to pitch games, on what games to create, panels on how to design certain things, what to look for, the understanding of play testing. So I believe that information makes it more viable for designers to produce or to design a better game than they may have done in the past.
And so do you see the professionalization of the game sphere sort of less a sort of ad hoc thing, more sort of standardized and professionalized as generally a good thing?
Oh yeah, I would think so. Absolutely. I think anything that betters our industry is a very good thing for everybody.
So let's go back to the beginning. So let's talk about Shadow Fist. So that was what got you into publishing. So firstly, what was it about Shadow Fist that made it so attractive to you? What was it about the game that captured your attention?
I was into CCGs for a long time, since January 94. I got into Magic the Gathering, and then I got into a bunch of CCGs. I was always a fan of martial arts films, so I love the theme of Shadow Fist, even though it crossed various time periods. It was very much a Hong Kong action cinematic game. I love the fact that it was a very good multiplayer game that played in a relatively short amount of time for a multiplayer game. Most CCGs were dueling games, one-on-one type thing. So I liked that Shadow Fist presented a fresh perspective, allowing 3-4 people to play and play, in under an hour usually. But generally, you can get a 3 or 4 player game under an hour. And it was just fantastic. So the theme and the mechanics were just great.
And so, I mean, the 90s, I remember I was, I guess, sort of 14, 15 when Magic hit. And the 90s became this sort of jungle of CCGs. Firstly, why do you think it hit? Why do you think it hit then? And why do you think so few managed to go on and have the legs that Magic had?
Well, I mean, there's always that, being first in the marketplace gives someone a leg up more than others. I think the idea of creating a deck from a pool of cards and then using that to play against people, and then you can modify the deck, I think it was a great idea. And then, obviously when something is successful, everyone jumps on that idea. And of course, there are people who say, oh, we can do it better. And many of those did not. And those that did, those that were otherwise successful, I think didn't say, oh, we're going to do Magic better. It's we're just going to do a really good game that has the CCG model of, buying blind boosters and then having people create decks from them.
And so what did Shadow Fist have for you over Magic? Why was that the one that captured your attention as opposed to Magic?
Again, I think it was the multiplayer aspect and the theme. Again, I was a fan of the Hong Kong action movies. I used to watch a lot of films in the 70s and 80s, and I was very much into that sort of genre. So that was a very big appeal for me. And I think that I really love the fast-paced attack capabilities of the game and the way the game played, and it just seemed you got to play a lot of cards. I'm not down on Magic. I like Magic, and I was actually a Pro Tour judge. I was one of the first judges in '96 when they did the Pro Tour in New York. But in terms of playing, I glommed on to Shadow Fist. And again, I think theme had a lot to do with it, and I like the fact that it had a very fast multiplayer aspect to it.
And so you were a big Shadow Fist fan. You were playing it a lot at conventions. What was your feeling when Daedalus went out of business and stopped publishing the game?
Well, I mean, of course, I was disappointed. At the time, I was part of a group where we were big demonstrators for a lot of CCGs, so while I was disappointed that I wasn't going to get any new cards, we'd still pull out our Shadow Fist decks at the conventions and play. And it was, we just had people come over to us constantly that said, oh, I didn't know somebody was going to bring their Shadow Fist decks. I would have brought mine. And that got me even more interested. And then to the point where I said, oh, maybe I can do something about this.
And so, I mean, how did it do? So this was Shadow Fist was your first publishing venture, right?
Correct.
And how did it do when you brought it back? Did you find you had a big fan base to tap into? Yep,
I had all the extra players. Not the extra players, I'm sorry. I had all the players that were playing the game excited for the game. Now, remember, I think I started in 98 to get the game back. So this was, I think, about a year or a year and change after Daedalus went out of business. But again, we were pulling out Shadow Fist at the various conventions, my friend and I. And again, we saw a lot of people interested in it. Yeah, it just I lost track of the question. I apologize.
No, it's just how did it do? Was it successful out of the gate?
So yes, it was successful. We first published a starter set and a booster set, and we sold out very soon after. Now, there's levels of success, right? And this might lead into the next thing. Why did I go into board games and stuff? But it was successful enough that it was able to maintain, meaning I was able to get out this starter set and booster set and then make enough to say, okay, I can now afford to do, continue and release another expansion. So it never became, as I had hoped, wildly successful to the point where that's all I would do. But it was enough, at least in the beginning, to keep bringing out new product.
And what were you doing at the time as a job? Or when you decided to go into this, was this became your gig?
So it's funny, when I first published Shadow Fist came out in Gen Con 2000, so August 2000. I actually got a job at Comic Images in March 2000, and my job there was gaming manager. And I was the commissioner of the Raw Deal collectible card game, the WWE, or back then WWF, then changed to WWE collectible card game. So I was actually working at Comic Images while also running Z-Man games and bringing out Shadow Fist.
And so when did you transfer yourself from working there to full-time at Z-Man?
I was laid off at Comic Images in 2006 when finally the WWE game, the sales just didn't warrant its publication anymore. So they let me go, I believe it was, April 2016. And I obviously transitioned to Z-Man full time. I was trying to look for other things, other work, including in the video game industry. But in the meantime, while doing Z-Man full time, and then about a year later, I realized that, I'm actually supporting myself doing Z-Man full time. I think I can continue this. So I stopped looking for other work and maintained Z-Man full time.
Fantastic. So your first game you take into the cabin is Risk. So firstly, why are you taking this one with you?
It's something that I played with as a kid. I started gaming probably around 8 years old. Stratego was my first real game experience, and then I graduated to Risk from there. Just a lot of fun memories of Risk. I like Risk, and I thought it was a good thing, a good game to kill a lot of time with, being in this cabin.
And so Risk has been around for a long time. Where is the durability in it, do you think?
Man. For me, I think it's those moments when you have that one guy left defending Siam from invasions into your Australian territory. And that one guy just keeps rolling 5s and 6s and beating a big army. I just love those moments.
And Risk is a game that gets a lot of derision from the gaming public. Do you think this is deserved? Do you think it's deserving of that sort of mocking that it gets?
Everyone's got their opinion. I could see why some people don't like it. If you look at it with a modern sensibility, you might say, we need more strategy and stuff involved in such a war game. But as a beginning-ish war game, I just think it's fun. You get the highs and lows of those die rolls, turning in a set, and getting a wave of soldiers back into the back onto the board and sweep across the board, and that back and forth kind of thing. Yeah, it's fun.
And so just one question, because I'm not a Risk expert at all. If you get Australia, are you destined to win?
No, but you're destined to be a target. That's for sure. As I said, you gotta build that wall in Siam to stop people from getting into there. But if you could do it early, it's a very good start. It's a very good start if you can get that early, because of that one single point of entry.
So moving on then. So Z-Man Games, you start doing it professionally, and Z-Man was famous for importing a lot of games from Europe, especially Germany. What gave you that idea? So I started as a Shadow Fist company, right? I didn't expect to do anything else. Then a little card game came to me called Grave Robbers from Outer Space. I fell in love with that game. I love B-movies. And I tweaked the game, and I brought it out at Gen Con, I think 2001, and it was a big hit. And then there was appeal to having a game where almost no one asked me any rule questions, which is very different than a collectible card game where there's constant facts, errata, and things like that because of because of what a CCG is, the way it exponentially increases in strategy and difficulty and everything, because as you add more cards, how they interact with other cards and from the past and so on. This was just a nice, solid, non-collectible game, and that was really, really good. So I tried to investigate, and some people started pitching me other things, but I noticed also probably around 2002 or so, I became a member of Board Game Geek.
and I started to see, what was out there, and I saw the influx of German games from Germany, mostly from I think Fun Again and Rio Grande and stuff, and and people were clamoring for it. Plus, people were clamoring for games even from Japan as well. So you had, those holy grails where they say, "Oh, I wish this game was in English and that game was in English." So I think I saw the writing there and said that this is something that's going to be, very big, and I think I need to be a part of it. And that's what got me started into thinking about, making deals, networking with foreign publishers to bring these games to North America.
And what was the difference between the American and the European markets at that time, and how difficult was it to get licensing deals?
I still think at that time, in the U.S. especially, I think games were still seen as something for kids. So it definitely was not as big as the German market, where games were seen very much as family, a family thing to do. So that was, one obstacle, of course. The other thing was trying to make deals when the monopoly of a publisher, which was probably Rio Grande, was one of the big ones, had their hands in all the bigger companies from Germany, and that was the big obstacle to come over. So I would try to make deals, not even make deals, just talk with other publishers, especially from Germany, and they say, "Oh, sorry, well, we're working with Rio Grande. We're working with Rio Grande." I was like, "Wow, how am I going to get in here?" So I had to look elsewhere, smaller companies or companies outside of Germany, Czech companies, Japanese companies, and so forth, to see if I can start making inroads into them. And that's what I had to do. So I had to overcome the obstacle of people just working with Rio at the time. And again, you're talking 2002, 2003. That was really the big thing to go through.
And so one of your first big hits is it's become, I guess, one of the standards of gaming, especially Eurogaming now, and that's Agricola. How did you come about licensing Agricola?
That came about because I had networked with Lookout Games, and I did their Scepter of Zavendor and End of the Triumvirate games. So these were games that Rio was not picking up. So I saw that people on BGG were looking for those games, especially Zavendor. There were people that had their stickered. I think that right back then, people were having their translation stickered and they put it on cards or tiles or whatever. So I felt, okay, this is something I should go after. And it was definitely the relationship I cultivated with Lookout Games for those two games that allowed me to get Agricola over anybody else.
And did you know at the time that Agricola would become what it became?
No, I didn't. But when it premiered at Essen, it was funny because it premiered at Essen. I had my own games. I think at that time I was going to say maybe I had Geos and something else, but probably not. I think it was later. But I was doing my games, and people would come over to me and say, "Oh, I just played Agricola. You got to do this in English. Oh, I played Agricola. You got to do this in English." And probably a dozen people would come over, and then finally Lookout Games came over and said, "So, have you been getting people asking you to do this?" "Yeah." He goes, "Good, because I've been sending them over." And I said, "All right, I'll do it." You got me. So it was very funny. And he said that there were a lot of publishers looking to do it, but because of the relationship I had with him, he said, you're number one on the list. If you want to do it, it's yours. And I think with the buzz that it was getting, plus I wanted to keep the relationship with Lookout, I think it was a no-brainer that I was going to do it. But it was still a scary prospect, and that's why I did what people want to say maybe one of the first pre-order and or Kickstarter things, even way before Kickstarter, where I had a pre-order list for it, just to make sure, because I knew it would be an expensive game. It was not. It was going to be a $70 game, and it was a $70 game.
Was that sort of unprecedented at the time?
Yes. I think the only other big games at the time then were those coffin box games from Fantasy Flight Games, where they were $80 or $90. So $70 was very, very big. At that time, I think $40 was the norm. maybe it was going into 50 where people wouldn't blink, but 70 for sure. I thought people would definitely blink and say, well, I don't know. So it was scary. I couldn't commit. I knew I was going to do the game, but I didn't know how much to commit to it. And that's why I offered the pre-order thing. And then I actually, to even make it more interesting, I did the Animeeples. And that's where there's your first stretch goal, right? Where it was, hey, if we do this, I will, instead of cubes, I will do the animal shaped pieces for it. The boar, the cattle, the sheep. I think I set a 1,500 unit run, or a minimum, meaning if I got 1,500 orders, I would definitely do the game. And lo and behold, I got it. It happened.
And was the English printing the first one to do the Animeeples?
Yes. I want to say, I'm trying to think, there was a time where, because I think we were before the other partners. The other people were doing it as par for the course, meaning the other partners who ended up doing Agricola automatically put it in. But I think, and I don't want to take credit where it's not due, that I was the impetus for doing the Animeeples, but mine was, if you do the pre-order, you can do it. And then I think the other partners just said, yeah, we're just going to have this in our games.
And so how did it work logistically? I mean, now there are loads of professionals. There's loads of sort of pilot fish that sort of swim around the main shark of the industry. But where did you find things like translators, and where did you get the games printed and things like this?
Well, the translators, usually the German companies already had English made. And even with Agricola, the English was done, and I believe it was, I'm not sure if she traded it a lot. Melissa from Australia, she had a very big hand in getting the English done. And then for other license, the other licensors that I worked with, a lot of times the English, everything as well. And I believe I proofed the cards for Agricola. I proofed the rules. So I did that for all other partners, wherever I had time. And it was mostly, maybe there's like 1 or 2 games out of 30 or 50 where I didn't have time to proof because they had to run to get to printing right away. But I think I always had time to proof even a little bit. And then for printing, usually with the German partners, we did it in Germany because we used their printer, and they kept doing it in Germany. At that time, they weren't so keen in doing it in China because they were used to the quality of the German printers. I, at the time, was doing Germany and China, depending on the project. And again, usually if it was a European partner I was with, we used Germany. And if it was on my own, I went to China. Although sometimes by myself, I would go to Germany as well. So I printed, it made sense. And even U.S. The B-movie games were done in the U.S. So there you go.
And I mean, at this time, back when you were coming out with Agricola, what percentage were games that you were doing solely as Z-Man and which were licensed? How many? What percentage-wise?
I in my head, I always tried for 50-50. I don't know if that's exactly what it was. I'd have to go back and actually do the percentage. But in my mind and in my mission statement, sort of, I would tell people I was going for a 50-50 thing. 50% original content and 50% licensed content.
And so what are the sort of differences in profit margin with licensed projects and own produced projects?
Certainly with the own produced, the margins are a lot better because you're paying, when you're doing the license, you're paying a royalty fee, I guess that's not correct because you're still paying a royalty to the designer. Sometimes the royalty was a little higher than you would pay a designer. But I guess there's not much big difference. I think the biggest difference is when I license out my games to a foreign partner, then those sales, my margin is not great because I only get a royalty for that. But I think just having the control of original content, because I can sell that to multiple partners as opposed to just being the one partner in a game. So, let's assume I had Agricola. Obviously, I would have made more money if I was the one where I had Agricola and I sold it to, Germany, Poland, France, Italy, and so on. rather than me just doing the English language versions, because then I would have had my hand in all those other pies.
And so this next question, when I wrote it, I thought it sounded rather grand, but I still think it's relevant. To what degree do you think Z-Man has had a hand in molding the tastes of American gaming?
I mean, I don't want to sound boastful or anything. I think it's safer to say that I experimented. I brought different things to the marketplace. I believe. I think that I was willing to experiment, and in many cases I was successful. Not in all cases, of course, and I don't expect that. Right? No one can be 100%. So I would say that I think when someone saw a Z-Man logo on a game, for the most part, they knew they were in for something different. Again, for the most part, because I was a licensee for very dry Euro games at times, or for other things, but I always tried to do something different, bring something different to the table, and I think I succeeded more than once.
So your next game is a game that certain people develop a very strong obsession with, and this is Tichu. So why are you taking Tichu to the cabin? And is Tichu one of the best card games out there?
It's my favorite card game. I almost never say no to a game of Tichu. It's a ladder climbing partnership game, so 4 players. It's I guess ladder climbing is a subset of trick taking. Some people argue it's not trick taking; it's only ladder climbing. Whatever, you're taking a trick, but you're playing it in a different way because you can constantly play around. It's a great game. Is it the greatest? I mean, there's a lot of card games I love, but again, when you're limited, you just try to, take something, you try to choose what you feel you'll enjoy. And Tichu is something I would always enjoy. It's something that I don't mind constantly playing. It's just a grand game. I love it. It's just so much fun. I remember even someone asked me, because I told people I like games with stories, and they go, well, Tichu doesn't have story. It's not a thing. And then I thought about it for a second. I go, you know what? It does have stories, because I could tell you some great stories I had playing that game, with some fantastic moves or, beautiful calls of of calling Tichu and making it, or grand Tichu. So yeah, I think there is something there. It's just a fun game. Yes, it's limited and restricted to 4. But yeah, it's something I would bring because I enjoy it immensely.
Yeah, I mean, for me, some of my greatest sort of indelible gaming memories have come with card games. Learning them, getting the strategies, and finally winning against someone who's bested me, 100 times before is really satisfying, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And so Tichu really seems to attract obsessives. There's a certain group of people that are sort of really into Tichu and treat it as a lifestyle game. Firstly, are you one of those? And secondly, what is it about Tichu that lends itself to that?
I don't know about a lifestyle game. It's not a lifestyle game for me. I mean, again, I like it, but I don't think there's any game where I must, this is all I think about, this is all I do, this is all I am. I don't even have Tichu-related merchandise. I don't have the Tichu app on my phone. I don't have a Tichu scoring app on my phone. I don't have a Tichu book. I don't write down my games. I don't save my games because I just like playing. To me, I'm a social guy. I like playing. I guess it's the way I would say bridge is probably more of a lifestyle game, at least to me, than Tichu. Although, yes, I can see where people would treat Tichu like bridge. But it's just a game that you can talk around and over with. You play the game, but just talk about the day's events, what you're doing, what's going on, how are you? And, oh, look, Tichu. So, yeah, I mean, I guess there are people that do love it that much, and hey, more power to them. I just love the game, but I'm not obsessive over it.
So you're not one of these people who goes crazy at your partner if they play the wrong card, then?
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, I even, especially when we're teaching somebody, I even say, hey, just play the way you want to play. Don't worry about it. I'm here to have fun. And that's really it. So of course I'd like to win, but I don't play to win. I'm not cutthroat. I do what I can. If my partner makes a mistake, Okay, move on. Let's go.
So now you may not agree with me, but from an outsider's point of view, it seemed the biggest success Z-Man had was Pandemic. How did the signing of Pandemic come about?
So I met Matt Leacock. Matt Leacock, first he pitched me a few games and he sent me some samples of his self-published games. I think one of them, was called Lunatic Loop, which was a car racing game with shooting, things like that. I didn't like it. Then I met him at the Gathering of Friends in 2017, probably March or April 2017. And he showed me a game about ants. You're a colony of ants. And I think it was the last day of the show. I was actually, I just got to finish the game, but I had to run to the airport, so I didn't get to do the scoring. Later, he told me I had won, so I left. And I said, I'm not crazy about this game. And he said, oh, I got this other game. It's a cooperative game. It's curing diseases. Do you mind if I send you a sample of the game? And I said, yeah, sure. Go ahead. Let's do it. So he sent me the sample of the game. And luckily, I was able to get it to the table pretty much right after I received it. I had a playtest session scheduled soon after my return from the Gathering. So I pull out the game, teach it, we play it. And I remember the first time when we had an epidemic and, we had to pull that city card to show where the 3 cubes were going to go. And everybody at the table stood up, with bated breath. And right then and there, I said to myself, yeah, I'm doing this game. This is to get such a reaction was just amazing. And yeah, we loved the game. And I think I called Matt right away. I said, all right, let's go. I want it. And then we got it out. I think it came out February 2008. So yeah, I said 2007, not 17. Sorry. And then we got it out in February 2008. So it was, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Yeah, just about 9-10 months from the date I played it, that game was out.
And so what was the state of that prototype? Was it the Pandemic we know now, or was there a lot of development involved?
No, I published it as is. I don't think we made any changes whatsoever. It worked as is, every aspect of it. If there was any development, maybe Matt may have tweaked something here and there, but honestly, I don't even recall that. So it was pretty much, here's the prototype, and then we, hired a graphic designer, hired an artist. We did the cover, did the map, graphic designer took care of the rest, and that was it, off the town. I think the only thing we asked about was, do we keep the population information on the city cards just because? So there was maybe a time where we said, well, it doesn't do anything to the game. We needed it, and we thought it was cool to have it. So I believe we kept it. That was really it.
And so how prevalent were co-op games at this time? Was this one of a few co-op games out there?
Yeah, I think you had the one co-op years ago. I think it might have been the Hobbit one by Reiner Knizia. And I believe then you also had Shadows over Camelot, but that was, co-op with a trader element. There might have been one or two other. Oh, actually, you had Saboteur, which I licensed, and that was also a co-op game with a trader element, which actually did very well. And I think you had Bang at the time. No, that wasn't co-op. I apologize. No, that was different. That was just hit and roll. So there might have been one or two others, but a full co-op game, I don't think there had been one, or certainly the co-op genre was not popular. And actually, I had a bunch of people tell me that I was crazy for doing this game, that there is no market for it. And I said, well, how do you know? No, if no one's done it, how do you know if there is, or not a market for a co-op game? And again, I just kept going back to the standing up and the bated breath of where an epidemic was going to happen. And I said, come on, that's what games are all about. Those moments, where you could say, where were you when this struck? And I said, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to take a chance. And I was successful enough at the time where I could take chances. Going back a little bit, it was funny because a friend of mine and I, we always talked about, how many disasters could Z-Man withstand before having to go out of business? And of course, when you're starting out, it's like one disaster could do it. And then it got to the point, because this was already 2007, 2008. So remember Agricola. So because Agricola came 2008, pandemic February 2008. In 2007, I started getting very successful. I had a string of good hits, not monster hits, but good hits. I had Duel in the Dark, 1960, The Making of the President, Prophecy, and of course I still had my evergreens, Saboteur, No Thanks, and a few others. So it got to the point where it's like, hey, I could withstand 3 or 4 disasters before going out of business. And of course, a disaster meant, if I spent so much money on a game and didn't make it back, and even if that meant if I decided to do a 10,000 print run of an expensive game and only sell 1,000. This is a game I did 3,000. I didn't need to sell. I needed to sell maybe half to make my money back. So it was never going to be a huge disaster anyway. And I said, yeah, I'm going to try it. I really like this game, and I think it's worth getting out there. And and that was it. So
when did you start to know that it was going to be this big hit?
It came out, I think, very end of January, beginning of February. I got some reorders. I didn't really pay attention. Then I was at a show with the same friend. We were doing a show, and I, looked at my phone. I got some emails, and I think I got 2 or 3 really big reorders. And I remember looking at it, doing some calculation, and I turned to my friend. And I said, I think we're sold out of Pandemic. He's like, what? And I go, yeah, this is the fastest it's ever happened. It was like 3 weeks. I was sold out of the game. And I said, ooh, I think I have something here. And then, of course, things started happening where, I didn't get the next reprint till about 6 or 7 months. I had to change printers and so on and so forth. But I knew it was a hit because I sold out so fast and there was still demand for it. And I said, I think I have something here. I didn't know it was a more solid thing until probably that summer or fall, where once I got the next edition out and that sold out fast and so on and so forth. So yeah, it took a while to really know, but it was definitely my fastest selling game. And then it took about 7-8 months before I realized that this is a phenomenon that is probably here to stay.
And so many people, myself included, cite Pandemic as their entry into gaming. How does it feel to know that you've created so many gamers with Pandemic?
I'm happy. I love it. I've been a gamer most of my life, and I love having new people discover the hobby and the joy of playing games. So yeah, it makes me very, very happy that I had a hand in making people happy and getting them into games. I think that I think that's wonderful.
And so your next game is Axis and Allies. Is this the natural sort of level up from Risk?
Yes. It definitely, it's what I graduated into after Risk. I started playing a lot of Axis and Allies.
So what is its appeal as opposed to Risk? Why would you play Axis and Allies and not Risk?
I think because you have more, it goes a little deeper because you have the economic system, you're buying the units, there's a lot more strategy to the game. So you have to remember, even though I played Stratego, I cut my teeth on war games. I was a big Avalon Hill player of games. I played a little Advanced Third Reich. I played War and Peace via mail way back in the 80s. So I always loved the war. And I think Axis and Allies was one of those the war game nomenclature, but still accessible. But the fact that it had the economic system, you had all these different units with different strengths, and you can roll, on the battle board, and just the different strategies, and it definitely a step or two or more above Risk, which is sort of simplistic when compared to Axis and Allies. But yeah, I was just a big fan of Axis and Allies. Yeah.
So how important do you think games like this, Fortress America, those sort of games are in the American pop culture and to the childhoods of a lot of American people now?
I don't know if that's where they went into war games. Remember that you're also going against, things like Life, Monopoly, Clue, Anti-Monopoly. So there are people who took that path of your basic roll and move games and so on, and then the ones that diverge into the more strategic games. So it definitely had a place for it, but I think it was more niche than the other games that I cited.
And do you think so? I think this is considered sort of a classic of the Ameritrash genre. Do you think this should be up there with some of the great German games, your Agricolas, your Through the Ages, these sorts of things?
I think so. Axis and Allies. I think so. I think it's a wonderful, game that's accessible. So you have entirely as elegant as some of the German games, but I think compare it to Settlers, right? Where, Settlers, you got to know that, these things turn into that. There is an economic system. Yes, there's a trading system. There's, how to build stuff, where to build. I think it would be along that level. So I think Axis and Allies would be something that would be worth inclusion into that game. And the level of interaction is very cool, which, some German games or Euro games, part of the reason why they call them Euro, right? There, you don't have that level of interaction with other players. So I think it would be more akin to Settlers than maybe some of your drier Euro games.
And do you still get to play it?
No, I've not played Axis and Allies in a long time. There was a time where I had 2 or 3 boards out in my living room at the same time, because I used to play AOL used to have a section for Axis and Allies, and I was able to play a couple of games online while judging another game. I would have 2 games out while playing. Then there was a time I had a roommate who also loved Axis and Allies, so we'd be playing a game. But yeah, I've not played that in a while. If I brought it to a convention, could I get it out and play? I might be able to find some players, but I don't know. I just never did. I haven't brought it.
So I want to talk now about being a publisher in the current market. What are the dangers of publishing board games at the moment?
Well, I mean, there's always the same danger is obviously printing too much. That's a big thing. Even if you get a great price, it doesn't help if you get a better price at 10,000 than you do, let's say, at 5,000, and you sell 1,000 copies. So you just got to be careful, and you have to understand, especially now, the marketplace is very, very, very crowded, that you have to be very conservative in your printing. It's better to sell, not make as much of a margin, but sell out of a game and then possibly reprint if you need to. The other dangers which is related, is the fact that, there are so many games that are out there. How do you get yourself visible? So there's a danger in even producing a very good game that if you can't get out there in front of people, it means nothing. So that's scary for a publisher nowadays because of the plethora of games that are being published to be seen. It's tough. It's very, very tough. On the other hand, it's good to be a publisher in that, yes, the industry seems to be still demand for a new product, but you gotta tread carefully.
And so, when do you sell the most copies of a title? Is it in the first 3 months of release, or does it vary depending on the game?
No, it's definitely the first 3 months, and it might even be the first month nowadays. Beyond that, if you've not gotten a hit, I don't see any way of it increasing in the future. There may be a game. Somebody asked me this recently, and I couldn't think of it. I said, maybe there's a game that didn't do well in the beginning, but later on, all of a sudden achieved such a status that it grew. I don't know that. Unlike some movies, for example, I cited examples of some movies that become cult hits, right? They didn't do well in the beginning, but
Shawshank Redemption is a good example. Shawshank Redemption, right? It didn't do well in the theaters when it first came out, so you probably would say, all right, that's done. But for some reason, it got a second life in just by being out there in TV or cable at the time, and people then discovering it. I don't know of any game that's been discovered after its initial run that turned out to be incredibly successful. If someone knows one, please tell me. I would love to do that. But I would still say the odds are against you that after the first 30 days and
probably no more than the first 90 days. That's your biggest selling period, unless it becomes a hit there. So if it does not, then that's pretty much it for the game. But if it does, then obviously the game will grow and so on. But that you have 30 to 90 days to get to that level.
So something like Pandemic has an upward tick on the graph as opposed to a downward one.
Within the first month, it had a bunch of sales. There was still demand for it, and then it continued. So it didn't subside. And mind you, I thought at some point eventually it would subside. You would think that, okay, it's saturated. Everyone has a copy that wants it. Nobody else, everyone has made their decision already. But what you cited about new gamers getting in, and possibly because of that game, so people teach other people how to play that game, and they go, oh, that's a great game, I'll buy it. Then they go teach other people, oh, that's a great game, I'll buy it, and so on and so forth. So it kept upticking, it never downticked. So it wouldn't follow the example of had it downticked immediately and then got an uptick. That would be an example of a game surviving past its 30 to 90 day mark, where if it didn't do well, now it does well. So it always did well with that. And again, so I don't know any game that didn't do well when it first came out that all of a sudden found a new life later on.
And so if someone were going to go into the world of publishing now, what advice would you give them, and what are some easy mistakes to avoid?
Well, the first thing is you got to decide if you're going to use Kickstarter or not. That's a thing there, and that's probably a very different conversation because Kickstarter sort of answers a few things because they'll tell you the demand. But let's assume you don't use Kickstarter. Again, don't print 10,000 copies of your game. Be conservative, even if you don't make as much doing 2,000 or 3,000, it's better to sell out. You'll still make money as long as you price it right, of course. You'll still make money, and then if there's still demand, then you can reprint. So I would say that would be a big thing. You got to watch your margins. So you gotta be smart about what a game is worth and how much you spend to make it at the price that you need it to make a margin. So let's say there's a game that you know what? I don't think anybody would pay more than $50 for it. So there it is. It's $50. If I sell it to distributors, I get $20. So I know my production should be, $10 or less if I want to really try for a good profit. So you need to know all that. And then you'll have to say, okay, well, I'm going to spend X amount on art, X amount on graphic design. All these factors you need to take in and be smart about them. That I would say also do your research. Find out what's out there. Try to do the best game you can, best quality, best theme, best mechanics. Don't try to copy somebody else. I think that would be the bulk of what I would tell people. I mean, there'd be little minor stuff here and there. But again, the answer of whether you're going to go non-Kickstarter versus Kickstarter would be a big difference in what I would say. I mean, for Kickstarter, from what I know, I haven't done Kickstarter, but I've talked to many people who've done Kickstarter. The biggest thing is obviously mind your stretch goals vis-a-vis shipping, because that seems to be everybody gets killed in the shipping of their game, not realizing how much it costs to ship a game. And when you start adding a game and then T-shirts and then extra cards and then extra minis, and all of a sudden this game that was reasonably priced for shipping, when you add in everything, now you're spending money to ship. That's not good. So you got to watch what how you price out shipping versus all your stretch goals should they unlock.
So your next game is No Thanks. Why is No Thanks going to the cabin with you?
That one, I guess, just for ease of play, just because anybody can play it, and it's one of those games where you can be social while playing it. You don't have to pay that much attention to the game. So, it's a game that you can, it can take your mind off things, or it can just allow you to just talk about anything while still playing. But I think it's the accessibility that, I don't think anybody would balk at playing that game.
And you bought No Thanks to America. How did it do there?
Fantastic. That was very much one of my early successful licenses. That and Saboteur. I think I did that at the same time or very close to each other. Those two games. We'll just stick with No Thanks. No Thanks became what's known as an evergreen. It basically sold every month. There was really no downtick. It was one of those things where you can look at it and say, "Yep, I know I'm going to sell X amount a year at least." And it got me further into the minds of the board game players, where they go, "Oh wow, Z-Man Games. Yeah, look at this this player over here. They have this cool little game. No Thanks." So that helped me ingratiate myself with the players.
I mean, do you think players follow publishers?
I think some do. I've had many people say that at the time that whatever game I would publish, they would consider seriously, if not buy it outright. And I've had many retailers that said, "Yep, if it's a Z-Man game, it's an automatic. I'll buy at least one copy, and if there's more of a buzz, I'll buy multiple." So I would say yes, there are some that follow publishers and are fans of a publisher and will seriously consider any game published by that publisher. And I think that happened with me. I had my fan base. I had my fan base of players, and that was one of the things I was going for. Was when you had asked me about getting into board games, what got me into it? It just, when I saw the writing on the wall saying I think board games are going to be big, I also knew that a lot of people were going to be doing this. So my goal was to make sure that I was going to be in the top 5 of companies that people would buy a game almost sight unseen, because there would be such a glut of board games that there'd be no way to keep up with it. So I had to be in that top 5, and I think I achieved that. Part of what's the problem is these days is now the glut is way bigger, so it's harder to achieve that goal.
You left Z-Man after founding it, and then it was acquired by F2Z, and then subsequently Asmodee. What were the circumstances of you leaving the company?
They felt they didn't need my services anymore. My job at the time, after I sold, I was with them for 4.5 years, and my job was basically the acquisition of games, development of games to the market. So doing what I was doing, but not having the daily grind of the daily day-to-day business stuff. So I was doing mostly the creative stuff, plus being the face of Z-Man. But they felt they didn't need it anymore. I mean, we had some issues. We were out of contract, and there was some changes to it. I asked for certain things. It didn't happen. So that was it. We parted ways. They said, "Okay, we don't need your services," and that was it. So that was why I left.
And so was there any bad blood, and how did you feel to leave a company that you'd built from the ground up?
No bad blood, but still personally, it was, leaving your baby. It was hard because I wouldn't have done it. I mean, I was happy to stay on and be associated with Z-Man, but no hard feelings. It's like, all right, well, that's what it was. That's all I could do. I did the best I could, and life goes on.
I mean, what was the reaction to sort of gamers that you would meet after you left? Because, I think Z-Man was synonymous with you. I mean, even the name of the company. Did people come up to you and offer condolences? Did they say, "I'm never buying a Z-Man game now, you've gone," that sort of thing?
I don't know about that far, but there were people who were, inquiring as to why I left, wishing me luck. Some felt unhappy about that. But overall, I think people were just wishing me luck in my next chapter in life, so to speak. So I think overall people were happy, or at least hopeful in what my new position would bring. My new endeavor would bring. So they were, everyone was looking forward to that. And mind you, even today, there are still. I was at a convention recently, and somebody didn't even know I was not part of Z-Man anymore. So I still get that from time to time.
And so, someone who's seen it from the inside, the sort of the acquisition and consolidation of gaming companies, do you think it's broadly speaking a good thing? Is there anything us as gamers should be concerned about?
I don't think there's an inherent good or bad thing about it. I mean, it's going to happen. and that's it. So it's a matter of, it's like if so let's say Z-Man was bought out. Well, I mean, you've seen the Z-Man releases since then, so it's really up to the people or the players to decide. Well, are they following the old model of Z-Man? Are they doing, cool, different, unique games? Did their philosophy change? That's something that the players would have to decide. And the same thing with any acquisition. It's a matter of, does the parent company let the people, the companies they bought, run autonomously or follow their philosophy of games, or do they change it to what what the parent company says should be? I don't know. I don't think they've done that. So I don't think inherently bad or good, unless unless a trucking company bought a board game company and said, all right, you will now only do games about trucking. That would be bad, but that's not happening. So it's really up to the players to decide if really Asmodee buying up a bunch of companies has affected the companies they've been following.
Do you think Z-Man is still following, broadly speaking, a similar track that you went on?
I think in the beginning a little bit. They haven't published as much as I had, so there's definitely a slowing down of publications. Although I think recently, didn't they just announce like 3 or 4 or 5 different games? I honestly have not played any of them. I only played one of the card games that they had last year, I think. So I don't know. I don't know how these games are. Somebody would have to tell me and say, hey, yeah, they're still doing cool, unique stuff. I don't know, honestly. I've just not had a chance to play any new Z-Man game in the last, probably in the year after this one card game. And the one card game I played was pretty cool. It was different.
So how did the job at Wizkids come about?
When I let people know I was leaving Z-Man, I immediately started getting emails and Facebook posts and calls saying, okay, hey, what's it going to take? What do you need to come aboard here? And I got a bunch of offers, and I narrowed it down to 3 companies and finally chose Wizkids. And that was about within 2 weeks of leaving Z-Man, I was working for Wizkids.
And what was it about the Wizkids project that appealed to you?
The idea of them letting me letting me pursue the philosophy that I had at Z-Man, which was, doing cool, fun, unique things, and giving me almost free reign to do what I like. Confident in my ability to pick good games, and said, do what you're best at and go for it. And I think that was it. And also they're a solid company, good financial backing. So I knew they weren't going out of business soon. So that, all those points were definitely in their favor to choose.
And so what do you want to see from Wizkids in the future? How do you want gamers to talk about Wizkids? Because there has been certain issues before you joined Wizkids, gamers said certain things about Wizkids,
Well, I'm hoping to change that, and I thought I had, although some people I think are still stuck on the old Wizkids and have not. And I think I may have posted it even once where someone says, oh, they use thin cards and so on. I go, have you seen a new Wizkids game since I came out? We don't do that anymore. So I'm hoping, I didn't know how big an obstacle that was, but I'm hoping to slowly, actually quickly, but it's been going slowly, changing people's minds about what a Wizkids game is. And again, to show that we got cool, fun, unique things, and we have good quality components. Sure, things happen here and there, but that happens with every company, even when I was running Z-Man. But I think overall, the fact that we're doing really good games and that we're doing different games. So again, you don't see the same game over and over. We've done small games, we've done big games, we've done games in between. We've done family games, we've done gamer games, we've done partyish games, we've done a word game. There's no locking us down. It's me deciding what I think is cool, fun, unique to do. And I think I'm achieving that. In the last couple of years, I think we have some really strong titles out there. And I'm very, very proud of that.
So your last game is one of my personal favourites. I think possibly the best board game that's ever been made, and this is Through the Ages. What is it about Civ games that makes them so compelling?
I think it's the seeing the story grow. There's an arc. I mean, at least for a good Civ game, right? There's an arc. You start with little, and as the game goes on, you see the growth of your civilization, right? More cards or more resources, more expansion, more table being eaten up by the various things, or depending on the game again. I think the unfolding of the story is what is appealing to players of Civ games. But I will say this: the other reason I mentioned that game and or any Civ game was also to, in the apocalypse, something to occupy our time for a long time. And many of these games take hours and hours and hours. And I think we would definitely need something to take our minds off the bad stuff happening outside. So that was the other reason for mentioning a Civilization game.
Yeah, in the notes you sent me, you said Through the Ages or any other long Civ game. Are there any other Civ games that you like as much as Through the Ages?
Yeah, I mean, there's, some of the older stuff. I mean, there's like Empire. Well, you have Civilization, Advanced Civilization. You have Empire of the Ages or something, or the Empire of the Seven Ages or something. I mean, yeah, there are several that are out there that would, and even Mega Civ, that would probably serve the same purpose of having an unfolding story arc that also would just take a long time and occupy us for many, many, many hours.
And does Through the Ages do something that other Civ games don't?
I think maybe it takes a little shorter than some of the other Civ games. I think it plays a little differently. I don't think it expands as much table-wise, I believe, because everything is in front of you. So no, I mean, but it's just a well-done Civ game.
So one last question. You're driving to the cabin. You're herring down the road at high speed, and you go around the corner. The back door flies open. 4 of the games fly out, go down a ravine, into a river, and are swept away. Which game do you hope is sitting on the back seat of the car?
I'll say Tichu.
So if anyone wants to get hold of you, how would they do that?
To do what, though?
To tweet at you, Facebook?
No, the best thing is probably email me. Or see me at a convention. If you want to pitch me a game, for sure, there's a web form on the Wizkids site that you can fill out. Facebook, I'm hardly on, and I don't have Twitter, so you can't do that. So yeah, I would say email is probably the best way to contact me for something. If you're a designer, definitely contact me and or fill out the form online. Available for meetings at conventions, and even just to stop by and say hello at a convention. I do all the big ones and some of the smaller regional ones. So I do go to a lot of shows. Great.
Zev Shlasinger, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if you want to suggest a guest, or if you want to say something nice about the show, or if you want to say something horrible about the show, you can contact me on @5gamesfordoomsday on Twitter, or you can send me an email at 5gamesfordoomsday@gmail.com. You can give a rolling donation to help support the show at patreon.com/5G4D, or a one-time PayPal donation at the bottom of the website, 5gamesfordoomsday.com. And if I haven't had to leap tall buildings in a single bound to dodge the frozen yogurt leech machines and the tenderized Happy Meals, I'll see you in 2 weeks for another 5 Games for Doomsday.